Concerns were expressed today that the reporting element of the Children First legislation might place onerous demands on the designated officers within organisations. The draft bill is being considered by the Oireachtas Committee on Health and Children before it goes to the Dáil.
The Health Committee began a series of meetings today on the Children First Bill, which provides safeguards to protect children while attempting to combat abuse and neglect. All welcomed the legislation, adding that it was long overdue. Concerns were expressed around a small number of areas, including the reporting element and the appointment of a designated individual in organisations.
There is, in a number of the key points, in my view, an overstatement of the responsibility as against the role. I think it's very, very important that the organisation recognises that it is the responsible body, and the designated officer isn't, a scapegoat within a structure.
If you have a designated officer, and I can think of my own background as a volunteer in the Girl Guides, and we have a system where you have a safeguarding membership officer, and if you have a concern, you can contact them. But equally, if it's just something that the antenna goes up, you're not quite sure if it's an issue or not, as a leader, you can informally talk it through. But there's quite an onerous obligation on the designated officers to note everything that's said, transcribe everything that is said. And I'm wondering, is that a deterrent then?
In terms of being an onerous responsibility, again, I don't think so. I can understand why people are saying that, and of course things need to be recorded, but if we've learned anything from past experiences, we need to take that responsibility, take the fact that there will be additional administrative duties or additional work, and be delighted to be in a position to do that. It is the people who have the expertise and the knowledge that will actually be making those decisions within organisations, which is why I made the point that it can't just be senior management, it needs to be the people who are actually working with people on the ground.
What you're hoping from this bill is not to put an enormous onus on a individual, that they be upskilled, that they are effectively the competent one, but that it is broader, that the organisation has the systems in place, because the designated officer may be competent and they may be upskilled and they may be very much on top of their brief, but unless the channels are there throughout the organisation, unless the people effectively, in a sense, if you think of it as a pyramid, the people below them in all other facets of work or employment, unless they understand and know the procedure and report up, unless there's trust that the organisation is good, I do think people will be quite nervous to take on the designated officer post.
Every single organisation working in this field has been operating mandatory reporting for years now, and we've dealt with the issue of who is the designated officer, how is it managed, what its impact is going to be on clients. So we're not reinventing the wheel here. What we're simply doing is ensuring that that level of good practice is going to operate across all organisations, independent professionals and so on. So the anxiety that seems to be there is to my mind somewhat unwarranted.
Fianna Fáil's spokesman for children, Charlie McConalogue, said the legislation was rushed and that was reflected in the mandatory reporting element for designated officers.
There has been a remarked reluctance, I found, by the Minister to use the word mandatory reporting when she has been dealing with what this bill is bringing about. Yes, and I think part of the reason for that I have surmised is that it's to avoid the implications of mandatory reporting in terms of resources and what the experience may have been in other states when an obligation comes in on people to actually report at pain of penalty or criminalisation.
Fergus Finlay of Barnardos said over-reporting might be a feature in the early stages, but it was better than a lack of reporting.
There's every possibility that in the initial stages there will be an avalanche, that it'll be easier to report than not report. Right. It'll be easier to report than manage. It is sometimes the case that if something is reported, it won't be well managed at the other end. That will happen. But that's not a reason for not reporting. It is a reason for working through a proper system that's well informed by the guidelines. I mean, I would almost describe the guidelines, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, as a kind of idiot's guide. It is perfectly possible for any layman, and I'm a layman, to open up Children First and to work out what to do on a step-by-step basis. The guidelines give you that help. I take the point about there being gaps, and I take the point about there being work needing to be done. But all of us on this side of the table have been looking for this legislation for 7 years at least. There is a great opportunity now in the next month, 2 months to get it right.